This episode is brought to you from the Sensei Pickle Jar Studios, where they teach you how to use all that money you have saved in your pickle jar over the years towards your financial goals created through the Sensei Financial Roadmap tool. Click on the link in the podcast description to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody, to another awesome episode of Surviving Life's Pickles. I'm Scott Martin, your host, and today we have an amazing guest with us, Lauren Palmer, mayor of Harriman City. Lauren, welcome.
That's amazing. You already lost me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And Hill,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us today as co-host.
Well, thanks for having me. I always love being here.
So it's wonderful. And before we get going to our topic and, diving into Mr. Mayor's story here, Hill, what are you grateful for today? Let's start it off that way.
I'm grateful for the beautiful spring weather that we're having outside. More people being outside, having some walks with the dogs, and just enjoying this beautiful earth that we have. What about you,
Perfect.
Scott?
There's a lot to be grateful for.
There is.
I am grateful for, and I shared this in group this week. I'm grateful for the relationship that you and me have,
Mm-hmm.
that you encourage me to go out and spend time with myself.
Yeah.
You see that it helps me. I've been in relationships in the past that was just not okay. And it's completely different because you encourage me to go out. You encourage me to spend time. You encourage me to spend time with other people because, it's just not about our relationship. It's about all of the human connection that we can have. And so having that has just been awesome.
And I promise it's not just because I want to get rid of you.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That's right.
no, it's really not. Everybody needs their own me time.
Yeah. And so I'm super grateful that you're so supportive of me having that me time. And I guess on top of that is I'm just super supportive of grateful for all of the awesome places I get to visit with my job. I've been to Moab 4 times this year already.
Mhm.
Which is amazing. I got to go down to Monticello this week. It's the first time I ever been down there. It was beautiful. So I've enjoyed traveling a little bit more of Utah and getting to explore this beautiful state we live in.
Mhm.
So, all right, Lauren, what are you grateful for today?
Oh my God. This one is an easy one this week for me. It sounds weird, but I've got a son already going through a divorce.
Wow.
But it was a weird marriage. I'll just say that. I don't want to bash, I don't want to bash anybody, but it was a weird where we haven't had much of a relationship with him
Okay.
for about 18 months to maybe even 3 years. But him going through this has brought him home.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Us brought him back to the family, and we've missed him.
Yeah.
And so it's been about 10 days, and he's a different person.
Yeah.
I hate it. He's happy. We're seeing some old him come out. And so it's been a lot of happy tears over the last 10 days or so, even though it's an awful
thing.
situation.
Right.
But,
Mhm.
it's going to be good for everybody in the long run. And so it's fun to see him back and see the family.
Yeah.
Because my other son got engaged last week. So it's all these things coming back together. So I don't know if he would have been there if
Yeah.
not going through that. So to have all of my kids and their current significant others there one time, it's been a long time. And that was just last weekend. And so it's just like the timing of all this is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just healing, and it's good.
Well, it's awesome when that happens. For me, even after me and Hill started dating and kind of really started our relationship taking off, I reconnected with a lot of my family that I had it for years. And so I totally feel on both sides because the same thing happened with my kids. Like I lost touch with, I didn't talk to one of them for 3 years.
Right.
And so now that we've all reconnected and everything, it's so awesome when life just brings everything back around. And sometimes you just have to be patient.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yep. And it was hard, but
it was hard.
We
but
made it.
You made it and you're doing it. So awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing.
yeah,
Thank you for being vulnerable already.
already. Here we
Thanks,
go.
Lauren.
I'm good
Uh-oh.
at this.
But hey, we're going to jump into today's topic. We've asked Lauren here today. He has a pretty awesome story that's a little bit different from a lot of men's career choices, especially now day and age. It's becoming a little more common. But also we're going to talk about, as we go on, a little bit about Harriman City and what Harriman City is doing for their employees, their first responders, and the community itself as far as mental health and being more aware and kind of just being together for each other instead of just exiling people when they're having struggle. So that's kind of where we're going to go today. And Lauren, let's just start. I mean, you and me, as we were talking before, we've known each other for 16 years.
Right.
You're the reason I got into the industrial world anyway, because you're the one that brought me on.
I got you out of auto parts.
You did.
I got you over to the industrial side.
So, but let's kind of talk, kind of around that. What's kind of your background coming up to, now? Let's talk about where you started and your career a little bit. And
What's interesting, grew up in Carbon County in Price, came all the way through high school, served in LDS Mission in Uruguay and South America.
Oh, wow.
Came home and just was doing what they do, doing what we do in that culture, if you will. Came up, got married right away, pretty quick. Moved up to Utah County. Somebody I knew at church got me a job with Evco House of Hose in the hose world. I stayed because they were going to put me through school, right? My parents didn't have any money. They didn't have money set aside to put me through school. They hadn't gone through school. It was one of those, my dad was in the coal mines and
Right.
So I had no idea what to do for school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Had some different ideas, but Evco put me through business school. So that's kind of where I went. I thought, well, I guess I like business, right? I guess this is where we're going because that's what they'll pay for, right?
Yeah.
They weren't going to pay for medical school or anything, but they were going to pay for business school. So I stuck with that and fell in love with it. Fell in love with first the management side, understanding,
how everything operates,
right, how it operates, the back end, the customer service. And then once I moved to sales, that was me, because we've talked, once you sell a hydraulic hose, you can go sell anything. I mean, it's not just hydraulic hose, but
right.
sales is sales because it's relationships, it's connections. And so once you learn that sales and you find that niche, I'll never leave that kind of space, if you will. So,
well, and you bring that up. I mean, one thing that you taught me early on as we kind of worked together was sales is not about selling. It's about the relationships and the service you get to provide for other humans. And I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. And I kind of learned that from you, is you enjoyed it because you made friendships with all your customers.
well, that's why we connected, right? That's
Right.
You and I connected. We had that same vision and worked together early on to establish this whole, that whole western side of Utah County that was booming at the time.
Right.
Saratoga. I remember that. Like they weren't used to service out there. So we were
Providing something that nobody knew.
Nobody knew about at that time. So it was awesome.
Yeah. So how long were you in industrial sales in that world? Roughly?
So I was in that space for, probably 8 years at the time.
Okay.
Went through a divorce. And then at that time, I wanted a clean slate, right? So I left that, went with a buddy. We started a different business for a couple of years. But then after that, I missed it, right? I missed it. That company required a lot of weekend work and, I was divorced. My kids, that was when my time with my kids. So I was giving that up and I was not in a good place. I was crazy depressed at that time, going through that stuff. So I knew I needed to get back to a Monday through Friday gig. And so I got back into the hose space, working for a different company, a competitor, as you know, and then stayed there through remarried and then stayed there. I stayed on the retail side, on that local side, for another 6 or 7 years. And then I was lucky to get on with the manufacturer out of Australia, went to work for them. And then I became a sales manager for the entire Western US, which meant a lot of traveling, a lot of, next level, a lot of lower pressure stuff, fewer customers, which I kind of struggle with too, is fewer customers, a lot of travel. But then the stay-at-home dad phase came along later on. And so I don't know if you want to get into that right now or.
No, I mean, that's great. So you kind of spent, almost 20 years, roughly, about 18 to 20 years in the industrial sales world, helping customers, you kind of building relationships and that stuff. And you said you got remarried. I mean, at this time you were divorced and you had 3 kids or 4?
4.
So you had 4 kids. So you were a weekend and a part-time dad as you were trying to travel. I know that's pretty hard to juggle.
Right. And it worked out okay at the time because it was the every other weekend, right? My wife was busy. She was busy with work. So I would be gone Monday through usually Thursday night, but sometimes Friday. And then
have the kids on the weekends.
Kids on the weekend, right? They were so busy. They were starting to get to that age anyways where they were busy, but I was missing their weekly stuff, which was hard.
Right.
but it worked at the time. It worked. It was good for us at the
Yeah.
time. There were some challenges, but it wasn't bad.
Well, then you bring that up. So you got to that point, and I know just from knowing you, you started to struggle a little bit. Like you didn't want to be away from home as much. You were away from home. It's hard. It's hard to travel
Yep.
that much. And then you and your current wife, remind me her name.
Her name's Christy.
Christy. That's
Yep.
correct. You guys were talking about having kids, kind of starting a family with you two. Hadn't really been on the table too much before, and now you really started diving into it. And
Well, honestly, it had been, and we could get into that whole other subject, but we actually tried for a while. We actually went through, I don't want to talk too much. That's, I think, more her story a little bit because she's the one that, went through that more than me, right? I think the husband in that situation really has to be a support. That's hard for a
that's right, because you guys did some infertility
we did
stuff.
that
Yeah.
some stuff, and
Okay.
that's a whole other topic we should, that could be talked about as infertility challenges. But we went through that, and then once we, finally the last chance, it was kind of our last hurrah. The doctor said, "This is it," and then we got pregnant. Right? She got
Right.
pregnant with we call him our little miracle guy, Cohen, who's just changed our world. Right? He really changed the entire direction of where our lives went, because we would have probably kept
Just doing the same thing.
the same thing.
Going
Yeah.
through the motions.
Yep.
So when you did that, this is kind of when a big shift in your life happened, because Christy has a great job.
Mhm.
I mean, really well known in her industry, well respected. It was really hard for her to think about leaving that
Correct.
to be a stay-at-home mom. And so you were kind of tired of the whole travel and all that stuff. And so you kind of volunteered after you guys talked about it of, hey, I'm going to be the stay-at-home dad.
Right. And it felt good in theory at first, right? Because it felt like the right thing, right? Financially, it was almost a financial decision.
Okay.
Because she was making a lot more than I was. It was almost, but she wanted to continue in her career. She was very proud of, she had put herself through school. And so she had done all that and worked her way up this ladder. And so she was proud of that and didn't want to give that up. 100% get that, right? And so I didn't want to take that away from her. She didn't want to be.
She wanted to be a mom, but she didn't want to, that to be just her defining.
Identity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when I stepped in to do that, I thought, well, we'll give it a shot, right? And then, so we tried to do that. We stepped away, which was even the first few weeks after it happened. I tell everybody, I felt like I lost my identity, because my identity was sales. My identity was that I was kind of an expert in that space and
Right.
in that industrial hose space. And so it was hard to give that up. Then I'm not, what are you an expert in? You're, you don't have, sales is very goal driven.
Right.
And what are your goals when you're a dad? When
Changing 4 diapers a day, man.
Right. Let's get 6 hours of sleep tonight. So I struggled. I really did for a while, even though I was having a blast at the same time being with him. It was hard, right? There were a lot of mental challenges that happened during that time, as far as finding purpose, understanding, started to worry about when I would re-enter the workforce, where I could enter the workforce, would I need to go back to school? So all that happened for several years. And so, yeah.
So during that time, what were some of the big struggles? I mean, if you feel comfortable diving a little bit more into that, trying to find your identity, different things. I mean, what were those struggles for you personally? What were the day-to-day battles you were dealing with?
It was connections. 100%. That's what it was. I missed the connections.
You lost all of that.
All of that was gone.
People that you were seeing on a daily basis.
Because my entire job was people, right? And then you went to your whole world is one person, right? And it was struggle to get out. It was, it wasn't fun to go out, right? Because then
you got to haul him with you.
Yep, haul him with, and you could interrupt it, right? But I have different moments, different challenge. So I missed people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
More, that's 100%. That was so much of who I was and who I am still. That was hard to walk away from.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I mean, when I was staying home for those 4.5, 5 months, that was the hardest thing for me, is not having that day-to-day interactions with all these friends and all these people. It's a change.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yep. Made me understand it. It was good for me, because I didn't, I look back to my first marriage and I wonder, was I sensitive enough with my ex-wife when she was doing that? Because she stayed at home, and
Right.
granted, she wanted, that's kind of what her
Desire
her desire was,
Right.
but I still worried about that, and then we had twins, and how much harder that could have been at the time to have twins. And So I wonder if I was empathetic enough at that time and understood it enough. So I've tried to use that as to talk to men about, being understanding about their wives being home. And it's not, granted, we have rough days at work. Men have rough days at work and want to go hit a bar or get drinks with the guys after. And that stuff needs to happen. But there's somebody at home that's probably had a rough day too,
Right.
in different ways. And there's other ways to support.
Yeah. And now you see that side of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, that's a full-time job that is unpaid and often unappreciated.
Mhm.
And there's so many aspects that I don't think people understand. It's 24/7. You're there 24/7.
You don't get to end at 5 o'clock. You don't clock out at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It keeps going. So
Yeah,
even if
exactly.
dad comes home, it's tough. It
Yeah.
is tough.
It's a hard job and it's not recognized enough.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
100% agree.
So one question I have, and just because we actually have a few guys that come to a group that have done the same thing and jumped into that role, and they're struggling, the same stuff you've talked about. But what was the reception from a lot of the people in your life when you said, "Hey, I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad"? I mean, is that stigma there of, well, you're supposed to be out the breadwinner, you're supposed to do that? I mean, how did that view in your life at that time?
And the people around you.
Right. And it was interesting because I didn't hear a lot of negativity, or a lot of people are like, oh, that's cool. Kind of that unexpected, like, oh, that's not what I expected type
Yeah.
of thing. But like everybody's like, well, that's cool. I didn't really hear about it. And this is jumping ahead a little bit and we can come back to this, but I didn't hear about it until I decided to run for mayor.
Okay.
And then people publicly, that's like, they compared me to I was up against 3 other people. They compared me. I was up against a Harvard grad that was runs the airport division of airports for the state of Utah, and against the fire chief from Draper, and then a stay-at-home dad that works part-time youth soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's in your bio, that's what people were judging me by at that point. And they were looking at that as a negative, which was hard. It's like, wait, no, that doesn't define me either. Right. There was a career before that. And even if there wasn't a career before that, that doesn't disqualify you from being
qualified to do the job.
Or
Absolutely.
anything. So that's really when it hit me, was when people were referring to me and saying, well, this person's more qualified. That's hard. That was hard to hear, that because I made a decision that was best for me and my family at the time, and was one of the hardest things I've ever done. To your point, one of the hardest things I've ever done, that was being held against me in a way. And that was hard.
Well, and it's interesting to hear it coming from you. And then we talk about divorce. Let's just use this scenario, especially here in Utah. A lot of the moms, I would say 50% of the moms, are stay-at-home moms. If you get a divorce, they're automatically thrust into this career where they've got to go find a job to help support them on their side now.
Right.
And that happens all the time of, oh, well, you've been a stay-at-home mom. Well, you don't have any.
You don't have any experience. Yeah. Which is totally nonsense. There's so many skills that come from being a stay-at-home mom. Scheduling, or stay-at-home dad too. Scheduling. I mean, group management, people management. I mean, try talking to a toddler and convincing and convincing them just to take a nap. There are many amazing skills that are built from just being a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting story I think of, and I think you've read this book too, the book called The Go-Giver.
Mm-hmm.
You might have been the one that introduced it to me, if I remember right. But in that story, there's a part of it where there's a stay-at-home mom that goes out and had no career experience and had to jump in that scenario. And everybody looked at her like that, and she just was failing and failing and failing. And then she finally decided to embrace what she had done at home and use those skills of how she managed her kids and how she did that to talk to the people, because she went into real estate, about the house. And then she started showing them, hey, you can do this with a kid, or you can do this with your kid, and here's your areas. And once she embraced that, she became one of the most successful real estate agents in this story in her area.
Yep.
So to Hillary's point, there's a lot of skills that go into being a stay-at-home parent, period.
Might not be on paper.
Right.
It's real life.
It's real life experience.
Yes.
Right. It's street cred.
Yes.
I actually have to commend you and I have to commend all of the stay-at-home parents, because I couldn't do it. I know that. I know that about myself. I could not do it. I would probably go crazy.
There were those days for sure.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
were those days.
So as he started getting a little older, you started probably reaching out from what you're saying, trying to get more connection, trying to be involved, trying to get out of the house a little bit. Now, this is an interesting thing that you started. That next step, this whole youth soccer program.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that, because I know you were a huge part of the whole soccer program really here in the state with what you started doing.
So it was about 6 months in. I'll be honest, it was too hard. So we decided, I went to my wife and I said, we've got to try to find a nanny. We've got to try to find a babysitter, because it's not good for my mental health.
Mhm.
I need to find a job. And it was tricky, right? Because I couldn't go back to that hose space, because that'd be too hard, right? So I needed something flexible that was going to be
Right.
flexible with me. So I had been running a soccer program in West Jordan, just a recreation soccer program, not paid, voluntary. But I was the president of this league for several years. But they liked what we were doing out there. We were trying to keep costs low, which youth sports are just crazy expensive right now. That's a week-long podcast.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
it's crazy expensive. So we were trying to do some additional trainings and coaching training, but not raising the cost for the kids, trying to keep it under $100 for a full year of soccer.
That's awesome.
That's
That
what we're
is
trying to
awesome.
do, whether it be sponsorships, helping. So the state association saw that and wanted me to come try to help implement what we had been doing across the state. So they hired me full time. And I still remember, we found a great, I'm a soda junkie. So she worked at the Holiday Oil, and she was getting ready to have a baby. And so she was going to be a stay-at-home mom, but she wanted to take on some other kids, that's how she was going to make money, right? She was going to stay-at-home mom, babysit a little bit. So we started taking, and she was phenomenal. Angela, to this day, still is a good friend of mine. But that was the hardest thing, was dropping. He would cry, I mean, he's 6 months to a year. He would cry every morning I dropped him off. And that was so hard. I mean, we'd get back and he was fine, right? When you go pick him up, he was fine. He
Oh, yeah.
was happy. But just that moment, wondering if you're crushing your, crushing your baby and, ruin him for life. And again, moms have to do, moms and dads have to do that still. That is, and no offense to those that have to do that, right? But that was hard. That was really hard.
Mhm.
So I think I lasted 6 months doing that full time.
Okay.
And I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. So I went back, and it was like the money wasn't, I think it was $30,000 a year. It wasn't enough I was barely paying for the babysitting. It was more for my mental health to get out those connections, but it wasn't worth it.
Mhm.
So left, and then they brought me back part-time, so it was more, and let me bring him whenever I could. So that was better. So, I mean, it was better, but still, we still made a difference. In the few years I stayed around doing that role, it worked. It was okay, but it was still hard. We tried to make a difference while struggling with all this mix, stay-at-home dad. And so it was a weird few years that, I've heard you talk in your other episodes, not a lot of weird, a lot of memories aren't there from that time. It was just a blur, if you will.
Well, and it happens. I mean, the stress that you were going through as a dad, like you're saying, dropping him off and stressing about that all day. I mean, you're really not focused at work. And so everything's just kind of cloudy because all your stress is sitting over here while you're trying to work on you and do some, productive stuff here at work. It's a tough transition.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So all of a sudden I see Lauren Palmer for mayor come up on my social media.
Right.
So how did that even come about? What was your inspiration to want to get into politics?
Right. Well, it's funny because I remember it's about December. So where we're at, it was about 5 years ago at this point, just over 5 years. And we were trying to decide where to go. We knew I wasn't loving the soccer gig, as far as I still love the sport, right? It's not that, but I wasn't loving that. I was ready to just come home, but yet Cohen was also ready to
go to kindergarten, right?
Jump into school. And I had been involved with some community engagement stuff. There was a big housing development that was coming west of Harriman, and the city had kind of said no to it. So the developer kind of went around us and went to the Salt Lake County. It was an unincorporated Salt Lake County. And they started getting these approvals from Salt Lake County for this, mostly townhomes and apartments on the very far west end of Harriman, which already, if you live in the Salt Lake Valley, to get from I-15 to Harriman, is a nightmare. East
Yeah.
to west is a nightmare. And so we were all frustrated that there were no plans to upgrade infrastructure or add transit or any options. It was just, we're going to throw 6,000 more homes west of Harriman, and good luck Harriman and everybody else dealing with that. Right. And that's, now that I'm in it, there's more to it than that. Right. It was,
Right.
as a resident, that's all you see. You
Yeah.
see, you know, they're going to slam all this density, high density. That's the big key, you know, the big word out there now. They're going to put all of that west of Harriman, and it's going to ruin our lives forever. Right. So that's what, as residents, we started fighting that. And so that's where I started fighting that. And that led me to be on the planning commission, which I loved, just that back end of the city stuff. And so I fell in love. And then our previous mayor had kind of gotten some hot water over some stuff. So everybody knew there's going to be this open seat. Kind of, and anytime there's an open seat and there's not an incumbent running, it brings out a lot of people for a race.
Right.
So
And it's a non-paid position, right?
it's
Or it's
it's
a smallly paid position, and it's part-time. Like, it's not a full-time gig.
it's the most complicated thing I could ever
Okay.
tell you, because it's paid part-time.
Okay.
I do make about 30, I think it's 32,000 a year, but I do not know how you work and do this job, because I put in 40 hours a week.
So you're putting in a full-time gig.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, right? It's not a requirement, right? But that's not the way I don't do anything halfway, right?
Yeah.
So but most of the meetings are during the day. I remember when I signed up, I thought, well, there's gonna be a lot of council meetings at night. No, most of our meetings are during the day.
Wow.
We sit on different committees, and they're all during the day. So very little at night, actually. And so it's mostly during the day. So most of the mayors in Salt Lake County, those are the ones I know, right? Because you work in your counties, are either have been stay-at-home moms, or they're, you know, or retirees.
That's what I thought of. There's maybe retirees.
Yep. Or some flexible, they've got, you know, a flexible career. Some are in
Yeah.
high-end banking, or some real estate people. That's, you know, that's a big one, that because you sell real estate by night, and,
Right.
you know, that kind of thing by the day. So really it was, and I knew that going in, it was going to be a busy. And so it wasn't that, it was really, I still remember the thing that finally put me over the edge was, it was in December, and we were trying to decide. Everybody had been talking me into it, you know, begging me to run for it. And my wife, we sat down, and she said, Lauren, she said, you know what? Like, financially, we're okay. Financially, we're fine. Like, you've got the ability to make a difference. She says, I want you to find a way to go make a difference. And I think by doing this mayor thing, you can. And so that's what it was about for us, was the ability for me to use my relationships and my ability to create those relationships
Mhm.
to go out and make a difference in my community. And so hats off to my wife still to this day, to say, financially, I've got us covered. You've got a special gift that I think you can go out and use. And so here we are. You know, I ran for office. I don't like politics. I tell everybody I hate politics.
Does anybody really like politics at all?
Oh, I've met some people, believe it.
Yeah, I mean,
Crazy, right? But it's not me, right? I don't do it for that. I do it. I've had to dabble. I've had to learn that space, if you will,
that world.
that world. But boy, I still hate it. I don't follow the national stuff. People still ask me about the national stuff. I don't follow it, because that's not
why you got into it.
Yeah, it's not. And it doesn't affect what we do on our level. You know, we tell everybody a pothole doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. That's because that's what
Love
we
it.
do. We're
love
building
it.
streets and
Mhm.
trying to improve the community, and it's not a partisan thing.
So just really briefly, how was that race for you? And you hit on it a little bit, is people were diving into a little bit of your past, because that's what happens in politics, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And they were really giving you some negative feedback with you being a stay-home dad. But how was that part of the race? I mean, did you start feeling attacked, or how was your mental health going through that process?
It was different. It was, and the thing that saved me is I started knocking. I was the first one to announce, because I announced in January, and you don't have to announce at the local level. You don't have to declare that you're running until June.
Okay.
I came out in January and said, I'm going to do this. Hey, everybody. And March, April, I started knocking doors 3 to 4 nights a week.
Hmm.
I would my wife would come home from work. I would, she would take care of Cohen, and then I'd go start knocking doors all around
Saying
the
hi.
city, just saying hi, introducing myself. So really, I felt there was a ton of support already kind of bubbling up on social media and that way. So I had a lot of support before the other 3 even entered the race. So I kind of had this head start, and then the attacks were coming, but I didn't have to defend myself very often. it was the people I had talked to that really stepped up and defended me. So that was, it really wasn't a bad. It was stressful wondering if you were going to have to or get to do this role. Because, you know, I tell everybody, I joke with everybody. It was one thing to say I'm going to run. It was another thing to think, well, can I really win? And what does that mean if you win? Right? What does it look like? So
what's really going to happen if this happens and comes through?
Yep. So, but I still saw those things, and they played into some mental health stuff, and I think we'll talk about that here in a minute. But it played into some therapy I did have to pursue a couple years after that.
Awesome. Well, and I'm sitting here as you're telling the story, and we have a mutual friend that lived in Harriman at the time that we had a couple discussions, and it's Mr. Chad Frost. You grew up with Chad and Price.
I did.
And we had those discussions about, he's like, yeah, I never thought Lauren Palmer would ever run into politics. He's like, that's just not him. But I mean, hindsight, a few years later, everything I'm seeing from the outside, you're doing great things.
We're sure trying.
Yeah.
It's funny. I feel like I've grown into it and almost feels natural at this level.
Good.
Definitely not anything. I don't want to be the next level because that's everybody wants mayors or city council members to run for state
Senate or something. Yeah.
It's just not. I mean, I'm telling everybody that's not going to be me. I just don't like that side. So this is it.
This is it. This is what you want to do.
This is my home. Like I already know what I want to do after this.
Okay.
Because I won't do more than 8 years. I will do 2 terms. I'm up again this year. I'm pretty confident where I'm not cocky, but you know, we've got some good things happening, right? So I think the momentum's there and people want to keep that momentum in our community. But after this, I'm done. I'm going to go back. My wife wants to actually retire in 4 years from her space. So I want to give her that opportunity to go do something fun if she wants to and different with her career and not have that pressure of being the breadwinner, if you will, right? So I want to work in this space because I love local government. And so I'm going to stay in this space somehow, just not
at this capacity.
Not the elected one that gets yelled at all the time.
It really speaks to your character, I think, of the people that stood up for you, but also just your love of the community itself and not just wanting to climb the ladder.
And I will say most at this level are that way. Luckily, and it's not to deflect. I appreciate that. It's not, but most, matter of fact, we wish we had more people at the state level that had served at the local level, but it's a different personality. It is. And all the mayors I work with, I've just, for the most part, are just phenomenal that just want to serve in their community and don't want that ladder. And so that's why you get people that just come out of nowhere to run for
mayor of the town.
Yep. Yeah. And then even for state, right? They just they don't have any experience and they run for state office like, ooh, but sometimes it shows.
Yeah. So, well, let's kind of dive in. All of a sudden you got elected. How was that feeling when that happened?
Surreal, right? Surreal. It was. And I kind of hinted the previous mayor had some struggles, right? So Harriman was not a factor. We weren't at the table in any big discussions, right?
For any development as far as businesses and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, just not at the table. And our council had done well trying to do that, but it's not, and it has nothing to do with me, but people they want to work with the mayor. Like they don't want to work with the city council member. And that's not, I hate that because there's no difference between me. Like I work with 4 very qualified people that are on my city council, but something about that title that people wanted to work with. So when our mayor was not at the table, it was a lot of relationships had to be repaired or reestablished or established. Harriman wasn't, and Harriman was out in this corner of the valley growing quickly. Right, to where even the governor was on the record saying, like, we've got to stop Harriman from building just 1 acre lots. Like, and Harriman at that point was, it's 45% multifamily, meaning apartments or townhomes. We weren't approving 1 acre lots out there at that time even. So it was because nobody had been telling our story out there. So I had to start telling our story and reestablishing those relationships. And that took 2 years really to really reestablish that. And, it's all about relationships. Like this comes back again, full circle to relationships, and people don't know what they don't know. So we had to tell the story and talk about what was going on, talk about our needs, and bring us back to the table.
Yeah, it's that education factor of, if you don't understand what's going on, you don't know what's going on, there's so much that you need to learn. And sometimes you just have to step back and listen as part of the community, part of the state. And it sounds like you were a big part of putting that voice out there for the community.
Yep, that's what we did. And we got Governor Cox to come do a ceremonial bill signing in Harriman. And we did it intentionally around some townhomes, really cool trail we've got through this area, but we did it to where he could see, like, Harriman's doing, this is Harriman now. This isn't, we didn't bring you to a 1 acre farmland. We brought you to this crazy area with growth. And the whole mindset shifted, right? Just bringing him out, the story changed, and it's been different.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into a little bit as we keep going here. You talked about having to do some therapy. Now that you're a governor, now you're kind of going, not
Mayor.
governor, you're mayor.
Don't wish that on me yet.
But yeah, now you're mayor and you had to dive in and get a little help from yourself. Let's talk about that. I mean, what was kind of going on? And
well, there was one thing, and I've told this person, he's on my council with me now still. And I've told him, so I'm not saying anything that if he were to listen to this wouldn't know. But about 6 months in, I was running things very different than how he thinks things should be, right? I'm very out in the community. I believe in being at all the city events, all the community events. I do a weekly lunch, though we haven't even talked about that, but I do a weekly lunch. We rotate through the restaurants in the city, and anybody can come out, and it's a networking thing.
Have lunch with the mayor.
Have lunch with the mayor, ask me questions. Everybody buys their own, so there's no expense to the city or to my lunch. I have to buy my own lunch, but we get between 20 and 40 people every week, right? But so we were doing these things, and he didn't. It's just not the way
He wasn't used to it.
Yeah, would do things, right? And so I remember 6 months in, he asked me if we could meet, and we sat down in a little conference room at our city hall, and I had no idea what he wanted to talk about. And he sits me down, and he's got a legal pad, and he's got 2 to 3 pages of notes.
Okay.
And so I'm wondering where he's going with this. And he had that many
concerns.
Yes. Complaints, concerns about how I was doing things wrong. And I hit that rock bottom. I was like, what am I, like, if that's not what I can do, if this isn't the correct way to do it, I have no desire to do this then.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy that just shows up to the weekly meeting. And again, that's no offense. I don't care if that's how they want to. I don't care, right? That's on them, but that's not me. That would get me away again from my space of relationships. That's not how I'm going to do this.
Your whole purpose of,
Yes.
yeah, and goal of what you wanted out of being the mayor.
Yes. And I think what people elected me for, right? Because that's what
Absolutely.
people saw in me was out. And, but so a few months after that, became this shadow of myself. Even in our council meetings, I was quiet. And that's not good as a mayor if you're quiet and you're not commanding kind of the room in a meeting that might be getting heated but I was just scared, like, that I was going to be, is he going to think I'm doing something wrong again? Like,
kind of doused your fire.
yes.
Yeah.
And so at some point I thought, I've got to do something. I've never been, that's why I've loved this.
Yeah.
Because I was never that guy that thought therapy would work. Don't believe in it. Don't do it. I didn't look to it to try to save my first marriage. I didn't. Even my ex-wife and I had been through a couple of, she begged me to go do, and I was like, nope, we're fine. We can work through this. But this one was one I could not work. I knew that I needed something else. So I reached out to a friend who was in the therapy space, and I said, can I sit with you and tell you, ask you if this is something therapy can help? I said, I trust you. You're the first therapist I think I've really met that I might trust, like what you say, right?
Right.
Opened my eyes, right? Sat down with her and poured everything out about what I was going through. And she's like, I know exactly who of my therapists you need to see. And that therapist changed my world. Gave me these tools to where I don't care. Anyway, but when I'm starting to think that maybe he's questioning me, this council member, like, literally in my head, I'd make him small, turn him away from me, and it doesn't affect me anymore.
Yeah.
It's just this little mental thing. And honestly, now we're great. Because now I don't question anymore. So I don't know if maybe he's still thinking these things, but now I don't care. And we get along fine. It's never not been, we've never not gotten along.
Right.
But I don't question myself anymore.
Yeah. Lauren, I would love to dissect a little bit about why this point you were accepting to therapy versus how you were before. Just dissecting into where did that come from, and why do you think that therapy was not for you beforehand?
I mean, I think that, because I've asked myself that question, of course, a lot. And really it was, I don't think it was just this moment. I think it was everything came up, right? Because all of my past, the divorce, all the hard time, kind of really, I started questioning everything
Mm-hmm.
and looking back and thinking that it keeps coming up. So that means I haven't dealt with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was finally that if I haven't dealt with this, I've got to do something.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sleeping. I was stressed all the time. I knew I had high blood pressure. I wasn't going to bring it up to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew my health was at stake,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew something had to happen, and I knew that was finally the first time I knew I couldn't fix it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, because the therapy just ended up being not just about this person, of course.
Well, of course.
All of that.
It's usually a multiple things stacked onto each other. Kind of, Scott always says the soda bottle aspect.
It's that pressure. You got this soda bottle and you're shaking it up your whole life, especially as men. We shake it up and agitate it every single time something happens, but we never pop the cap a little bit to relieve that pressure, and just keep building and building. And eventually, I mean, in my case, it just exploded. Like, I completely imploded because I never dealt with it. You kind of caught it a little bit early and figured out, hey, I need to relieve this pressure a little bit. And so all of a sudden you started having these little pressure reliefs as you started going. How did that feel after the first couple sessions? A little bit of that pressure, a little bit of the discussions.
Even the first one, I knew I was doing, like, why didn't I do this? You start like, why didn't I do this before? Because it was, kind of listening to your episode with your therapist, the first one. It's just that talking, those conversations with yourself, guided by somebody. And it was like, man, and she was perfect for me because there were some religious aspects in there that she understood. Just a lot of, she kind of knew the city, how cities worked a little bit. Because this is a lonely role, if you will. Like, very few people know what it's, but she just enough to know this space. So she was absolutely great. Right. And then, but I saw the same company where I was going to, my little guy, we had actually put him in therapy for he just had a ton of anxiety. So I had seen him already start to change. So I say, if my little guy motivated me, if I
inspired you,
yes,
a little bit,
because if I felt like it was good for him and I was supportive of him, like, why? But so it was like, once that cork, once we opened that pressure, I knew. And my wife gets frustrated because for me, it turned my life. I think I visited with her for 6 months is all, but she gave me all the tools I needed in 6 months to completely turn my life around. Right. And so, my wife's done it off and on as she struggled. She, hasn't had that kind of success where she feels like she's connected with that one therapist. And I know a lot of people feel that way, but for me, I found my person. She turned it around quick. I bought into everything all the tools she gave me, and it
helped.
It helped.
That's awesome.
Well, and that brings up, and we've talked about it here before, is interview therapist. I mean, luckily you had a therapist friend where you told what you were going on, and she instantly knew somebody who could help in that space. But if you don't have that, you can always reach out to a therapist. And we've talked about this with multiple therapists here on the show. All of them will do a 15, 20-minute phone call with you to talk about what's going on, to see if they're right. Not every therapist is right for every person. Not every style of therapy is right for every person. You have to find what's going to work for you. Mine and Hillary's therapy is completely different on how we deal with stuff. We do actually see the same therapist on and off now, but
it's completely different style.
It's completely different style because she has a couple different modalities that she's in, and we both participate in different modalities. So it is finding that, and it's awesome when you find the person like you're talking about, because sometimes they're able to help you in such a condensed time. They're like, wow, okay. But oftentimes it's people sit with that therapist. I just don't want to go tell my whole story again. I don't want to go there.
Right.
And it's, sometimes you just got to get out of that comfort zone so you can find the person that can just click and start moving forward with you.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I really, really commend you for actually taking the time and realizing that your mental health needed a little extra boost, because so many people just continue to keep pushing it down and pushing it down. And that's one of the things that we want to share about here on our podcast, especially with men, that there is such a stigma to, men going to therapy and sharing their emotions or even sharing their vulnerabilities. So, yeah.
and I've tried to convince other people now. Once I think I see the light, right?
Yeah.
You tell other people how it can
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
and
It
change.
really can.
Well, let's dive into that. I mean, you say you went for about 6 months on a regular. Now you're kind of maybe on and off, or I don't know what that schedule is, but I mean, hindsight, that doesn't really affect going forward. Now you're trying to tell people about your experience, but how are you using that in both worlds? How are you using it in your personal world? Because you said you had some family stuff even going on.
Mhm.
And then let's dive into how you're using it as mayor of the city as well. But let's start on your personal level. Like, how are you using it to help other people in your life or deal with those situations?
Right. So really, I haven't been back. My therapist actually left that. She moved, started her own in a different state. So she's
Okay.
gone now. But there's still times I refer back to those things I learned, right?
You refer to the toolbox.
Yes, I go
Mhm.
back to that. But I also know that if I get to that point, I know I'm going to feel that point that I might need to find another one that I connect with. It's only been about a year since I've stopped, right? So I'm still in this good space right now.
Yeah.
Again, not,
Well,
she moved, right?
yeah, therapy doesn't always have to be
All the time.
consistent and all the time.
Mhm.
If you learned what you needed to learn and you're willing to continue to keep using the tools that they gave you, there's not necessarily any need unless you realize it one day, or if something happens, or God forbid that some incident happens that makes you forget those tools. But it doesn't have to continue to always be an ongoing thing.
Right.
Hmm.
Yep. And so for me, it's really just been sharing that. I haven't been shy about telling people, right? I do remember when I asked her, the lady I talked to did live in our city. And I remember telling her, like, she has offices in Lehigh and South Jordan. I said, I would really like one in South Jordan. Because I was worried about my community seeing me walk into this therapist office in Harriman. Would they start questioning me? And now I'm full disclosure, I would not have any concern if somebody saw me, and I would say every single person, in my opinion, should go through some sort of, every person. I absolutely believe every person should go through some sort of therapy.
Yeah.
No matter what they've been through, even if we've all been through stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. And I think therapy maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's a few years, but I tell everybody I recommend you have a therapist that you trust and you start and you go, and you may not realize you need one even at the time. But so that's my messaging is everybody, we joke about having a group discount now in my family, right? Because
Okay.
even my oldest son, right, he's been through the divorce. He's good. I mean, on the surface, no issue. He's already in industrial cells. He followed my lead there. But great life, married, happy, thinking about having kids. But even just a couple weeks ago, we reached out and said, Dad, I want to talk to the person who started you down that road. He says, because I think because he's that tough guy. He's never back through the divorce, which has been, it's been almost 20 years, right? He was 5
When you guys get divorced.
He's 25 now, right? So he's finally, but they also lost a brother.
Yeah.
My ex-wife had a son, and they lost him to cancer, to
Mhm.
leukemia. So my kids are still, so I think he's finally seeing he's 25 and finally admitting. And because I've been through it, that's why I'm proud that he knows I went. So he's not afraid, right?
Yeah.
He's not afraid to go at 25 and say, we're going to go get therapy. So I think almost all of my kids now have either been or are going to some
Awesome.
sort of therapy right now. And that's not an embarrassment. That's not anything. I mean, if I would have said that 4 years ago, I think I would have been like, oh, are we a broken family, right?
Mhm.
That stigma that we talked
Yeah.
about. But now I'm not embarrassed to say they're all getting help because they all want to improve their lives. And
Yeah.
I'm not embarrassed to say that anymore.
Well, and I commend you for that. I mean, you're leading by example with your kids,
Mhm.
and they're seeing the changes it had in you just by watching. And just that, without even you talking about it, has opened them up to wanting to become better and wanting to explore that option. That's awesome.
Fully. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But then on the city side, I will say that Harriman's unique, and I wasn't super involved, but probably in 2017, I may have the dates wrong, but Harriman High actually there was a suicide cluster that went through our
I
community.
remember that.
I do too.
There were several. I think 13.
Was it that many?
It was
Okay.
a lot. We lost a lot through that high school in 18 months. Like it was hard. And so
Devastating.
yes, and still siblings affected, that are still in our school system affected by that. So Luckily, mental health has been a focus in our community. But as we've grown from 20,000 to 60 plus thousand in 10 years.
Yeah,
right?
you guys have grown quick.
And that's a challenge in and of itself that people, you've got your old timers that, want the old Harriman still. And you've got, so we're not connecting as a community because there's so much growth. It's hard to keep up with that. But, we're trying now. We're trying. We have a lot of mental health facilities. They're all talked about positively on social media, if you will. They're involved. Even next weekend, we have what we call the Health and Safety Palooza,
Ooh.
which a big focus of that is going to be on mental health. It's not just the first few years it happened, it was, Intermountain Health brought bike helmets. There were vaccine clinics, all that stuff. Now there's a huge mental health component where we have suicide awareness. We have intervention programs coming, all that stuff. It's such a big part because the lady I talked to get me down that road is now organizing it. So she understands. And that was kind of an intentional fit because she brought that mental health awareness to this event. So granted, it's just one event, but it's going to be, it's huge, right?
So is it a community event then? Let's talk a little bit more where we're right here.
Yep.
I mean, so everybody in the community is welcome.
Yep.
And it's like free. Where are you guys hosting this at?
Sorry. Yes, it's free. A free event. It's in what we call Crane Park.
Okay.
Right out in front of City Hall. You guys are welcome to come up, check it out. It's Saturday the 2nd. Is that what it is? The first Saturday of May?
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's the 2nd.
Coming up next week.
Yep. So 9 to 11 in the morning. A lot of stuff to get the kids there and entertain them, but a lot of resources for adults too in this mental health space. So anybody's welcome. Surrounding communities as well. Of course, we market it to our community, but anybody's welcome. Free event.
It's really
Life
cool.
Flight's coming out. They'll do a takeoff with their helicopter and free 1,000 bike helmets we're giving out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really, really cool event.
So many resources too on the mental health side.
So you're going to have, I mean, sounds like a little bit of everything, a little bit of safety there with the bike helmet. You're going to have EMTs there. You're going to have, a lot of your first responders there. So the community get to know them, but then also have new sources of mental health awareness and different things that people can come check out. So
physical health, which I tie,
As well.
I tie that to mental
Oh,
health
yeah.
in a big way, right? But all of that, we're trying to encompass 100 vendors. You're going to have a lot of options, a lot of people.
Nice.
for sure. So, well, let's kind of dive more into, you're doing that as a community. That's one thing you guys are doing as a community. But as mayor, what do you see as far as just the city employees? What kind of needs do the city employees have, or what kind of things do they have in place already to help them with their mental health? Specifically, like even your first responders, they're the ones that really are on the front lines and have to see a lot of those hard things.
Right.
What are you guys doing right now, or what type of programs are you looking for in the future to kind of help that you guys have discussed?
Fantastic question. So as far as general city employee, I would say we have services available. That's part of it's included in our benefits package. That's one reason you come to work for city government, right? The pay's not great, but the benefits
Benefits are better.
phenomenal. And we've been intentional, including mental health options in that. There's free resources for your suicide, that kind of stuff. There's free resources for that. If there's any incidents that happen, accidents, there's resources immediately available for that. So we try to take care of our employees. One thing that I think our employees struggle with this is everybody refers to them as the city. Like they're the city. And no, there's individuals within the city that do a job. This is their career. So we're trying to really try to focus on humanizing our staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're the city. No, what about Sandra, who's in charge of our economic development, who's bringing in some amazing stuff? Like that's not the city recruiting. That's one person's career who she's gone to school and worked towards this. She's seeing her personal career goals coming to fruition right now, right? The communication side where they're, phenomenal social media campaigns. Like that's not the city, that's a person that's trained in this space. So we're trying to humanize that. And I've tried to highlight some of them. That's key for me, I think, is making, giving that person that recognition and that self, that gratification that what they're doing is being noticed by the mayor, right? If you will.
Yeah. Individualizing them as a single person or a single entity versus an entire entity as the city.
Right. Exactly. So we're doing that. And then PD, we're unique in Harriman. We don't have our own fire department.
You guys are unified, right?
We contract with Unified. And I'm pretty sure they have their own resources, right? We just don't touch it, right? We don't. But PD, we have a very good police department, right? We are blessed, in my opinion, probably with the, hopefully every mayor says that, but I believe we've got the best department in the state. But we have had some officer involved shooting. That does one happen early on, and that takes a toll on an officer,
absolutely.
right? I don't think there's any officer that goes to work thinking today I'm going to have to be involved.
Right.
And they don't. That's not on their mind. And the most recent one, wasn't even in our city, and it was just unexpected. Just I can't imagine being in that position where you're just out routine, checking on some in a neighborhood, and suddenly you're
All of a
having to
sudden,
make that decision.
have a
right?
standoff and you're ready to rock and
Yep.
roll. Yeah.
Yep. And I know they're trained for that. That's great, right? But there's a toll on that, right? And we give them the time off to deal with that. But some of them come back, and this, I don't know. We don't even know as in our role who these officers are when it happens. Like we're not told that intentionally, right? We're kind of a step removed from that. But you hear the stories that some of them don't come back after a situation like that because they don't get that help, and it's just too much, right? So we absolutely, even at the state level, the state requires certain requirements. So we're very intentional about making sure that anything they want is there. Anything they want, even on a daily basis, is there for them as far as their mental health. And then we talked about that. The owner of Redemption, the Redemption Bar in Harriman, is big backer of the Blue, right? Huge supporter, loves it. And so he's even approached me about just creating a space in the city where it's just for first responders. They can come, they can decompress, whether it be pool tables or, but then also have all these tools that they can kind of just know they're in a safe space. Maybe they don't want to walk into a similar to my experience. Maybe they don't want to walk into a therapist in Harriman, right? And be seen as, the tough cop walking into so hopefully it's the safe space. I mean, of course there's money associated with making that happen. He wants to do that out of his pocket and with donations, but people are seeing that need.
Yeah.
And I think officers even are being more open to this, but we've got to keep pushing that. I think we have to keep pushing it. I love our cops, absolutely love our cops, but I hope they're all open to this, right? I hope I can be an example to them of being, it's okay to go get this.
It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask for help and to reach out.
Yeah, and like we're kind of discussing, that's kind of one thing we're diving into here on our side is be licensed to start providing. It's called mental health first aid, and that, in my opinion, every city and every company should have a few of these people that are trained in this, because they're not a licensed therapist. They're just a normal person in the community, normal person at the business, but they have been trained in some of these skills to first listen and sit there and hear the needs and the things this person is going through, help them with a plan and help them put together of, okay, here's some resources, or well, here's some recommendations from what I know going through this training that maybe will help you. Let's reach out to some of these. And they become that personal advocate for those person in need in that business or in that community or in that, that department where, again, a lot of guys or a lot of people don't want to make that step to call a therapist. They don't want to make that initial move, but having this kind of person in between that's their advocate that they can go to. I look at it, if you look at a union
or a caseworker,
you have those people you can go to and say, this is what I need. On the union, you have your union rep. Hey, I'm having a struggle with this at my job. That's what this position, and that's what this training I'm hoping that we're going to start providing is going to help with, is putting those key people in place in the communities and in places of business of, hey, this is my coworker. I can go talk to them and they're going to help me. They're not in HR. They're not my boss. They're not, my chief. They're not my lieutenant, things like that. But I can go talk to this person there and give them the guidance and help them build a roadmap of self-care to continue on what they need. And we've seen a huge need, and you've talked about it's a big need. And that's kind of the direction we hope to go with this, is to be able to start providing that.
Putting it out there more. It sounds like even the guy, the owner of Redemption, is seeing the need for that and wanting to make a difference. So
yeah.
And I'm guessing I never asked him where that comes from, but a lot of our cops go there, right? They
Yeah.
do.
Right.
He's
That's their
probably
stopping
seen
point.
a lot of them come in,
Probably
and
heard their stories, I'm
yeah,
guessing, right?
Well,
I'm sure.
that's what happens when you own a bar. I mean, a lot of the cops use that to decompress. That's what they use going forward is, they don't have any other skills. I was that person. I didn't have the skills, so I used substance to kind of numb those out, numb those experiences. We have a really good friend of ours we were talking about this morning that is a member of SWAT, and he has always kind of done that and now started to find other avenues, and hopefully we'll have him on the show to kind of talk about that. But
Love that.
it's just this need of, again, giving people options that haven't been there before, letting them know that there's people out there who care.
Right.
And want to help.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When we go back to, we talk about relationships and these circles that we can create. I think if one department could embrace something like this,
And show it works.
yeah, and then it'll spread, right? And then it's okay if Harriman PD is doing this, then South Jordan PD they'll jump on. So I think that's where we start creating these circles and these connections. I think we can really. I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued, right? So it's something we're going to go talk about for sure. And we want all those resources possible for our guys, for our officers. So it's a conversation we're going to have, and I hope it goes well,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's just offering like new things. Like you say, you're talking about it publicly now about therapy and how well it's worked for you. The city knows that, hey, guess what? Harriman City's mayor is human, just like the
Right.
rest of us.
Yep.
He struggles. He's gone through things, but look, he's been open enough to try new things, and now he's sharing it. And that's huge. That's huge for a community and huge for a leadership role
Yep.
that you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome.
I hope so. See, maybe put this out after the election.
Right.
I'm just joking.
So,
Yeah.
no, this has been great. I mean, I love what you're doing. I love hearing the story of how you've got to this position and kind of how you're guiding the community just with your experience and your relationships, and just bringing everybody together is going to make a stronger city there for sure. And I hope that other cities in this state follow kind of what you're doing and get more involved in the community.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, before we dive off of this,
are we done already?
Before we could do this all day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots we need to catch up on, but we always end these episodes of, you got Hillary and me here. We're going to turn the tables. Now you're in charge. Do you have questions for one of us, both of us, or us together that maybe you haven't heard or you want to know that?
It doesn't have to be on the topic of today, right?
It doesn't.
It could be anything you want.
Okay, Hillary, I'll start with you.
Okay.
You don't have your own children, correct? Do you have your own?
Don't. Yeah.
So that was, and I've always, this is fascinating to me, the life of a stepmom.
Uh-huh.
And we talked a little bit about it coming in, because I don't think that's talked enough about, right? It's
Yeah,
you're
I agree.
filling this role of mother,
Uh-huh.
but yet you're not mom.
Mhm.
How is that? Because my wife and I talk about this all the time,
Yeah.
right? Because she's a stepmom to 4, soon to be like hopefully maybe step grandma, right? So it's another role now that she doesn't know. She's going to be confused how she fits
Mhm.
because she won't be full. How is that? 'Cause, I mean, I don't know if that's
It's amazing. Unfortunately, through my own journeys, was not able to have my own kids. I wanted kids. I feel like I waited a little bit too long. And so when I was looking for a partner, I wanted them to have kids. When Scott told me he had 5, I was a little nervous and a little taken aback and didn't know if I could handle 5 kids. But when he explained to me that the girls were already older, pretty much moved out of the house, and it was really kind of the boys, that eased me a little bit more. Those 2 boys are my absolute world. They have their mom, but I'm their mom too. And it's been the most rewarding thing of my entire life for Scott to share his children with me, and even for their moms to share their children with me. And I don't give them enough credit for allowing me to help raise these kids. And it has just been the most wonderful thing ever. It is hard, but Scott has been very kind, and we talk about it. And I mean, we have our boundaries, and honestly, Scott's kind of let me take the ropes in certain aspects. He's never told me not to discipline them or diverted me from being a parent towards them. He's always been willing to just let me roll with it. And he's been really great in that aspect, and I'm very grateful for it. So,
I love that.
yeah.
I love that.
Don't look at me that way. You scare me when you look that way.
It's just, it's because I could ask so much, right? Because we haven't
Right.
really caught up in years.
Right.
How, because I know your journey, you were going through your journey with your daughters. You know, you and I talked a lot about your daughters. How has your journey affected your relationship there? And I'd love to know where things are at now with your daughters, your older two daughters. I know you said there was some time without.
Yeah.
How, and I haven't, maybe you've talked about that already. I haven't listened to all your episodes.
A little bit, but not dive deeply into it yet.
Again, as they were younger, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. So I was just a weekend dad. And I look back at that, and that's one thing I always have to live with. I can't go back and fix that. I did the best I could, and I was the weekend dad, and it was okay. I did the best I could during that time. As things got older and I started seeing relationships things with, my ex and them, the stepmom relationship wasn't great, but I didn't know a lot of things that were going on with them because they didn't feel comfortable. They could come talk to me where they thought I was going to get defensive or and so I had put that persona out there that don't come talk to dad, and as things have evolved with everything that's happened with me, I've been able to explain to them and open their eyes about a lot of the stuff that I was going through. And by doing that, they have softened a little bit and they understand now kind of the way I was portraying. Wasn't really what I meant to put out there, but I didn't know how else to express myself. So I was really shut off and very unapproachable as they were kind of in their teenage years. And then we've had some incidents, and we went 3 years without seeing Kylie or really talking to her. We had a few things that had gone on, and we both had to work on some stuff. And I'm told this part a few times, but my first public speaking event I had invited both of them, and didn't really know. I keep putting it out there and always reaching out and let them know I'm around. But I'd put it out there to come to this event. And first time I seen Kylie in 3 years.
Wow.
She showed up. It was amazing. Like, I was so overwhelmed. It made me even more nervous.
Right.
But I was able to stand up there and tell part of my story, tell things that I've been working on, things, and it really opened their eyes of a lot of that stuff. And from that moment on, our relationships have just grown with both of them.
It's blossomed.
It really has. I mean, we can sit and talk about stuff. We have adult conversations. We have deep conversations. We do more things together. It really has, because I've softened my heart and opened up to them that, hey, I am here. And so that's been a huge, huge impact. Like, and we've talked about this in our support groups, and I love you, bro, as well. It's sometimes you have to give the kids space to figure out who they are, and then you can kind of try to reconnect after they've made their own journey too. Don't force it.
Right.
The more you try to force something that is not ready to be there, the bigger that wall becomes, the more bricks that are laid in it. And so that, for me, it's been amazing, because now we've hit the space where we've taken a lot of those bricks off that wall we built, because I've been more open first and kind of led by example of, I'm sorry for the things I went through. This is the reasons why. And now we're talk. Like, it's amazing. And it's been a wonderful journey.
Love it.
So
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if both of those were too personal. I don't know.
They were great.
Oh,
I love it.
Perfect.
that's why we throw it. You know, we
Yeah.
never know what's going to come out. And that's what we love the show.
I said we make you all vulnerable and uncomfortable with all of these questions. The best thing that we can do is let you just push it back onto us.
I love it. This has been great. I could go on for hours. I love
No.
it.
Well, we'll probably have to have you back on and dive into a few things. We'll see what comes later this fall with Harriman City and a lot of these things you're working on. I'd love to. We'll touch base again and see what happens.
See what's
So,
next and what's coming about.
100%.
Yeah.
So, well, again, Lauren, thank you for joining us.
Been my
Absolutely wonderful. Everybody else who has been listening today and watching, thank you so much for tuning in. We couldn't do this without your support. Please share this episode, share the information, hop on our website, see what's going on there. But again, make sure you tell your friends and family about this. That's how we can continue to do this, is spreading and growing our audience and continuing the support and helping people in the community by sharing these stories. That's what this is all about, is building a community and building more vulnerability with all of us so that we can all grow and be better humans. But on that note, before we go, you all need to go check out our website. Again, we're doing this to help everybody and support it, but we need your support too. We have got some awesome merchandise on the website. We would love to see everybody wearing Surviving Life's Pickles gear. We have hats, shirts. We have our emotional support, Peter Pickle. Grab him, share it with your friends and family. Go check out the website. And the best thing about buying any of our merchandise is, yes, we love you supporting us and telling all your friends and family about it. But the best part is, part of your purchase goes towards the I Love You Bro project. Those extra little dollars help every little bit grow the I Love You Bro project and their mission and what they're doing to support men's mental health here in the community. So keep that in mind when you're looking at buying some merchandise of your favorite pickle posse. Is that portion is going to go to I Love You Bro and help them grow as well as help support us so we can continue bringing this podcast to you weekly.
And without further ado, that's it for today. And thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.